When many people think of summertime in the kitchen, sourdough bread, baking of any kind isn't usually something that comes to mind. I know this as a food blogger from my analytics every single year. As soon as Memorial Day rolls around and as the summer gets hotter and hotter, the views on the website to the recipes that are baking related tend to decrease. Now you might think that I'm making this video just to get you to still make sourdough through the summer. That's not the reason. I still bake sourdough through the summer. I get the kitchen hot, and trust me, here in this old house, the kitchen definitely gets hot. But for me, having sourdough bread laying around all the time actually makes my life a ton easier and gives me more time to spend time outside enjoying all of the summer things. Sourdough is my lifeline in the summer. I find that in the wintertime, I love to experiment with a lot of different cozy recipes, different types of cookies and coffee cakes and cinnamon rolls and spices like cardamom and nutmeg. I'm more likely to take the effort to make sourdough croissants and pastry dough in the wintertime. But keeping simple sourdough bread recipes that I can make over and over again that fit very easily into my routine and don't require me to be inside a ton means that I can pull a bagel out of the freezer, toast it, throw cream cheese and salami on it, and we can have a quick lunch no matter what we are doing that day. If there are a couple of boules or baguettes sitting on the countertop, that means that in the morning, the older kids can slice off a little bit, toast it, quickly have their own breakfast, while some of the kids and Luke and I run out to the farm to check in on the build progress. Or we can have a quick sandwich on the go or pack a picnic lunch. My approach to sourdough in the summer is a bit different than what it is in the winter, but it still has its rightful place and can lend itself to all of the summer flavors. I'm going to share with you the kind of bread and dough that I am making every day, my tips for making it easily fit into your summer life, your busy schedule, and decrease your time in the kitchen rather than increase it. One of my best tips is to batch prep doughs. I talk about this really honestly year round because we're always busy. We always have a busy schedule, but no matter what season it is, I do find that I can have sourdough more consistently when I batch prep because I can get out all of the bowls, the scale, the ingredients all at one time. I like to do freshly milled flour, and it's a lot easier to grind a whole bunch of wheat berries all at one time, put them in several different recipes as opposed to making them in small batches. In the summertime, I'm really simplifying by not experimenting a ton. I've been doing nearly everything half whole grain, half white, just because I have such easy, consistent, reliable results. The exception on today's batch prep day is pizza dough. I'm just doing that 100% whole wheat because it works out well enough no matter what. I am prepping some baguette dough, pizza dough, and bagel dough. I recommend choosing 2 or 3 recipes that you make over and over again so often that you have them memorized. Now this can change from season to season. I go through phases of really liking one thing over another. Pizza dough remains sort of a constant. We like it more in the summertime because you can get fresh tomatoes and veggies, so it's such a great way to carry all of those seasonal ingredients. You can make it outside if you have an outside pizza oven. I like some kind of bread dough, whether it's a baguette or a boule, because they can be great to round out any meal or take food on the go. And then bagels are my favorite summer hack right now. As we work on our new house and try to make all of the decisions that have to be made over these next several months, acquire all the things we have to make it authentically look like a new old house and make plenty of compromises in between there, it's important to me that I keep my home and my routines here in our house in town very simple and minimal. I want to say thank you to Earth Breeze for sponsoring today's video. We have a busy summer and the last thing I need to be doing is spending all my time cleaning, doing laundry, trying to keep a flow around here. When it comes to cleaning products, laundry detergent, dishwasher soap in our home, I have been very concerned over the last several years about the chemicals that are in there that can really fill our homes with things that we don't want. And when I looked into the products that we use every day, for me, we do laundry every single day, I was shocked to find that laundry detergent is one of the worst culprits. So many brands use harsh chemicals that can irritate your skin and even pose health risks. I don't want that stuff around my home, so I switched to Earth Breeze. Their detergent sheets are free from harsh chemicals like dyes, parabens, phosphates, and preservatives, and they're way easier to use. No heavy plastic jugs, no mess, Just a pre-measured sheet that dissolves in seconds. I feel so much better knowing that I'm not exposing my family, myself, to all of those unnecessary toxins. And my laundry still comes out fresh and clean. If you want a gentler clean without harsh chemicals, switch to Earth Breeze. They're also backed by a 100% money back guarantee, so it's basically risk-free. Right now, you can get 40% off with your subscription by using my link in the description box below. Again, thank you so much Earth Breeze for sponsoring today's video. Another reason that bulk prepping is so helpful is if you are doing stretch and folds, you can do them all at one time. So you mix up 3 different doughs, and then for the next hour or 2 throughout the day, I am not particular about this at all. It can be 30 minutes, I'll do a stretch and fold. It can be 2 hours later. I like to get in about 3 stretch and folds with each dough. But if you have 3 bowls sitting there, you can just do them all right there in a row, and it makes it so much easier. You also have your counter taken for that bulk rise just one time, and then that sets you up for a week worth of bread, or however you want to do it. If you did 4 or 5, it really just depends on how large your family is, how much bread you're eating, how much you want to freeze. But you can't really overdo it, at least in my family. I could not make too much dough. It's always handy on the other side of it to have done that work ahead of time. And if I'm getting out 1 bowl, if I'm milling some flour, if I am getting out oil and honey and a scale, I might as well make a bunch at one time. Speaking of stretch and folds, my next tip for simplifying bread making to have fresh bread every day. This might sound very counterintuitive, and I know I'll have people who disagree with me, which is normal for the internet, but if this resonates with you, take it, and if it doesn't, leave it. This might be a tip that really changes the game for you, kind of depending on possibly your kitchen setup, honestly, because I started doing this when we moved to this house, and I don't have a very convenient spot to keep my mixer. So having to pull out a mixer or any extra step with anything in the kitchen, whether that's milling flour, it gives one more point of resistance, one more obstacle in the way. If you have just a few short minutes and you want to get some dough going, you have 5 minutes and you want to have bread tomorrow, that can be done. There just can't be many obstacles and hurdles in the way. And so ever since we moved into this house, but I think I'm going to continue it, honestly. I really think this simplifies it. I no longer use a mixer for any doughs. Now, my daughter uses it when she's making cookies. She uses it for whipped cream, mashed potatoes, that kind of stuff. But for bagels, for pizza dough, for boules and baguettes, and even brioche, which I think people find surprising because it's such a wet dough, I just do stretch and folds. And for me, it simplifies it because I can't really bulk prep if I'm using my mixer to knead everything. So having the familiarity with the process of just doing it by hand, honestly, I think it takes less time and effort. But also, I only have 1 mixer bowl. So bulk prepping means that I would need to put everything in the bowl, let the mixer do its job, move that to a different bowl, put the next stuff in the mixer bowl, let the mixer do its job with the dough hook, move it to another bowl. I use my mixer bowl, but that's only because it's a nice bowl that I have. But I don't put it on the mixer just because I find with bulk prepping and honestly in general, that stretching and folding yields more consistent results. And the reason for that is I'm allowing the flour to sit with the liquid ingredients in the recipe. The gluten starts to develop, and instead of forcing the process, I feel like what I didn't realize before and that I'm realizing now is with the mixer, with something like sandwich bread or a brioche dough, or really any dough, pizza dough, it's quickly forcing the process along, and it actually is a really simple and easy process if you just give it time. And that's the advantage of sourdough. You have time because with something like an instant yeast, the bread would already have proofed and risen before you could perform stretch and folds. But with sourdough, especially if you're using a starter right out of the fridge, which I'll go more in depth here in a minute, it's such a slow process, even in a warm kitchen, that you have hours to develop that gluten. And this might sound like, okay, so you're tied to your kitchen. How are you getting outside in the summer? Let me just give you an example of something that happened literally this morning. I mixed up some bagel dough and I mixed up 2 bowls and then decided to take my kids to the creek on our farm. So I didn't get back for 2 hours. So that dough just had time to sit there, no stretch and folds. And then when I got home, I did a stretch and fold. Then I fed some little kids lunch and got them down for a nap. And then I did another stretch and fold. I'll do a few things in the afternoon, go do one more stretch and fold, and that's it. So instead of a mixer having to sometimes run at high speed for 30 minutes, and even still sometimes it won't pass the window pane test. You know, it eventually will, but a lot of times it takes a lot more effort as opposed to just coming in your kitchen throughout the day, giving it a little stretch and fold. Honestly, even 2 develops the gluten enough. As long as the flour has time to sit with the liquid, let it rest first, it starts getting elastic without any effort. Now I am making a pizza from scratch here. I have fresh tomatoes, so I'm making a sauce. This is a summer classic for us. So for the pizza dough, we mixed all the doughs yesterday. I let them sit overnight. And then today I am rolling out the pizza crust. I like to cook them in preheated cast iron skillets. It works the same as a pizza stone. Anything that retains its heat works like a pizza stone, but I always have cast iron skillets just around, so it's easier for me just to grab those as opposed to doing a stone. So that's typically what I do. I also threw some fresh herbs from the garden into the sauce, and on top of the pizza, I grabbed some lettuce from the garden and I made a ranch dressing. Now this is a recipe over on farmhouseonboone.com. If you want a staple ranch dressing that you can use all throughout the summer to serve a quick salad with pizza, you can grab it there. You can also grab the pizza recipe there. And as usual, I will leave links to all the recipes below. Another tip for you is to use the refrigerator to your advantage. So if it's really hot in your kitchen and you started mixing up dough because it was the only time you had at 8 a.m. So by the time it's say even 4 or 5 in the afternoon, it's really, depends on how warm your kitchen is. You can pop it in the fridge, just in the bowl, maybe a little plastic wrap or foil on top. And then the next day you can shape it, let it rise again and bake it. And so I'm constantly just starting dough when I have the time. I think a lot of people let the timing of sourdough really get overly complicated and they track back, okay, this is my ending point. I need to 3 hours before that, do this, 3 hours before that, do this. And I'm always telling people, don't worry about that. Just start it anytime you can and then let the day unfolds as it may. If it turns out as soon as you mixed up dough, you left the house, you couldn't do any stretch and folds, honestly, it'll be fine. Just do one stretch and fold, leave your house, it'll be fine. If you find that that evening you were planning to shape your bagels because they were going to be proofed enough, and then there was plans that came up, somebody invited you somewhere, well, great, what if that happens and then I waste all that dough? Do not do that. Just right where the bagels are, no matter what has happened. Let's say you mixed them up only 3 hours ago. Put some foil over top of the bowl, put it in the refrigerator, and then tomorrow you can get it back out of the refrigerator, let it finish its bulk rise, and then shape, rise, boil, bake. So there's just so much flexibility with sourdough, way more, in my opinion, than an instant rise dough, because once you start that, it's going. It's not a slow process, but it still takes an hour or two. If you started the dough and you got invited somewhere and you're not going to be back for a while, I think you can use the fridge probably to pause it too. But I'm just so familiar with sourdough that it just feels more flexible, a better fit for a busy lifestyle. And the more you do it, the more you'll learn what'll work for you in your kitchen. One of my top tips for having bread every day without it getting stressful is just to not overthink the timing. Use the refrigerator to your advantage to pause and slow things down. Use warm spaces to speed things up, make it fit into your lifestyle. Make a short list of recipes. Just have your favorites. Get them memorized, make them over and over again, bulk prep, and then watch how less stressful mealtime becomes when you have stuff to pull from, whether it's on the countertop, whether it's baked, whether it's pizza dough cold in the fridge that you can roll out, whether you have it frozen, completely ready. All of that gives you options. Now, I just made a garden soup with fresh veggies. It's the time of year where we don't usually think about soup, but soup is a wonderful way to carry all of those garden vegetables. And I had some baguette dough from a few days ago when I bulk prepped all that dough. And then I let that baguette dough rest in the refrigerator in the baguette pans so that today I could bake it and have fresh baguettes, which rounds out any meal. Baguette dough really feels just like you're baking a bowl. except for you bake it in these baguette pans, which means that it's not a closed cast iron environment that produces a lot of steam with a lot of heat during the baking process. So the only difference is you need to add steam to the oven. I just pour boiling water into preheated cast iron skillets, and that is enough to fill that entire oven with steam. I go back and forth between just making bowls and making baguettes. I have a nice little repertoire of things that I make over and over again, so they're very straightforward, and I'm not having to think through the how-to, which is a point of resistance. We were talking earlier about the mixer and the grain mill as a point of resistance that just stops you. It's not like it's a huge thing to get dough going, to have bread just going in your kitchen, but when there's a point of resistance and not knowing how is definitely something that creates that tension. It makes a task that really doesn't take a whole lot of time hands-on into a much bigger thing because you have to think it through, read it line by line. Now, of course, anytime you learn something brand new, you're going to have that process. But once you get really familiar with something, it becomes easy. I've mentioned on here just all summer long how I've been making so many bagels, and I've been making so many bagels that my kids have now gotten used to them being in the freezer. They just expect them to be there, sliced in half, ready to pop out and throw in a toaster. I mentioned that I'm no longer using my mixer for bagel dough, which I would have thought would have been very challenging when I first started making bagels because they're such a dry dough to the point where it feels like there's no way you're going to be able to incorporate all of the flour into the liquid. But again, just like with anything sourdough, be patient. Now, I don't mean this is time consuming. I just mean that you should give the dough a lot of time. So start mixing it up with your hands or your mixer, whatever you want to do, but then let it sit for a while, even while there's a bunch of flour sitting at the bottom of the bowl. When you come back an hour later, you will find that now you can actually work a lot more of that flour in and continue that process until it's all worked in. It's really tempting to want to speed the process along, add a little bit more water. You'll find that the next day it'll be too wet of a dough to really be a great bagel. And so with sourdough, this is why I really value that period of time where the flour can sit with the liquid ingredients and absorb it all. It really comes together with time, not active time, but just time, just keeping things going and flowing and moving in the kitchen. That is always the theme from this channel, because it's not that making food from scratch is time consuming necessarily. Now, there are plenty of things I make in this kitchen that I enjoy spending tons of time on because I like being in the kitchen, but it doesn't have to be that way. It just takes a little bit of intentional time in the kitchen, revisiting the kitchen, throughout the day, throughout the week. But if you keep meat thawed out, if you keep dough going, if you keep your pantry stocked, there's always something quick to make without having to rely on takeout. There's always those easy staple meals that you can pull out in a pinch that I especially rely on in busy seasons, in times of the year where we're not in the house as much. And this is definitely one of those times of year. Happy baking.